It seems like every month of 2020 is like a new season of an apocalyptic show. In January, we had wildfires. On the third day of the year, we nearly had a third world war, and the events just keep on coming. If you want to check out the top 10 significant events of 2020, keep watching. Number 10. Najib Razak corruption conviction.
Receiving nearly $10 million from SRC International, a former subsidiary of state investment fund 1MDB. A verdict, a process that could take years.
This is definitely not the end of the world because there's a process of appeal and we hope that we would be successful then.
At number 10, we have this astronomically vital conviction and one of the silver linings in this entire eventful year. In June, Malaysia witnessed the conviction of its former Prime Minister, Najib Razak. Razak served in the office from 2009 to 2018. Over $1 billion of the Malaysian Development Fund's company, 1MDB, were diverted into Najib's personal accounts during this time. Overall, $4.5 billion was stolen and used by his associates to buy a super yacht, art, and most outlandishly out of all these, he funded the Wolf of Wall Street movie. In Malaysia's efforts to eradicate corruption, Najib was tried and sentenced to 12 years in prison, 10 on each of 3 charges of criminal breach of trust and 3 charges of money laundering for illegally receiving almost $10 million from SRC International. He was also fined 210 million ringgit, which is about $49 million for abuse of power. Number 9. Harry and Meghan stepped down from their royal duties.
It's not quite disintegrating, but there's little doubt the royal family is fraying at the edges.
As if there wasn't an abundance of controversial events in 2020, on March 31st, the Duke and Duchess of Sussex, Harry and Meghan, formally stepped down from their duties as senior royals.
Harry and Meghan announced they'll be stepping back from their...
How on earth has it come to this?
As in, they will no longer perform duties on behalf of the Queen. Now, what does this news mean to the couple? They're not just losing their Buckingham Palace office, they have to be financially independent, and while they'll have their HR titles, they won't use them. This decision caused a shockwave throughout the world. Everyone blamed Meghan Markle for pressuring Harry into making this life-changing decision. What do you think? Is the actress at fault? Number 8. Putin wins national referendum for longer presidential terms.
The polls closed in Russia today after 7 days of voting on constitutional changes. One would allow President Vladimir Putin to stand for 2 more terms in office. Early indications were that 70+% voted in favor.
To the shock of absolutely no one, literally, copies of Russia's new constitution went on sale days before anything official was declared. Putin won. Vladimir Putin has been leading Russia for over 2 decades, and this win that allowed him to pass the constitutional changes will let him run for president twice more. Now, what do these amendments mean? They're basically a reset button. Instead of the country's presidential limit being 2 terms, it's now 0. And Putin can run for another 6 years after his term ends in 2024. If he does so, then Putin will have ruled longer than any other ruler since Joseph Stalin and Peter the Great.
Being Russian leader since Joseph Stalin. But Vladimir Putin wants to stay in power even longer. Number
7. Beirut Explosions.
Just after 6 p.m. local time on Tuesday the 4th of August, an explosion ripped through Beirut's port.
Then on August 4th, 2020, this devastating event occurred. An explosion that's considered one of the most powerful non-nuclear explosions in history rocked the capital of Lebanon, Beirut.
Oh my God!
Not only just rocked, but it was heard in Cyprus, 150 miles away, and was felt in Turkey, Syria, Israel, Palestine, and some parts of Europe. What happened was that a massive amount of ammonium nitrate stored at the port of Beirut exploded due to an unknown cause. This resulted in over 204 people's deaths, the injuries of 6,500 more, and the loss of $15 billion in property damage. Number 6. Australia's bushfires. The first indication that 2020 was off to a rough start was the Australian bushfires. These bushfires were so destructive that the season between 2019 and 2020 was called Black Summer. Technically, the fire had been burning since December, and they peaked during January. By March 9, 2020, these near-otherworldly fires burnt about 46 million acres or 72,000 square miles, destroyed more than 5,900 buildings and 2,779 homes, and killed at least 34 people. Even more devastating, the number of animals affected will blow your mind. Nearly 3 billion terrestrial vertebrates were affected. Some endangered species may even have been driven to extinction. The Australian bushfires are estimated to have cost over $103 billion in economic losses and property damage, making the event Australia's costliest natural disaster.
Understand it until you actually see it coming at you in a wall of flame.
Number 5. WHO announcing eradication of polio 2020. For some uplifting news, next up is WHO announcing the eradication of polio.
Today, we come together to rejoice over an historic public health success, the certification of wild polio virus eradication in the African region.
This eradication has been in the works since 1988, and it has been led by the World Health Organization, UNICEF, the Rotary Foundation, the U.S. Center for Disease Control and Prevention, and the Gates Foundation. Since 1980, cases of wild poliovirus have been reduced by an impressive 99.9%. In August, WHO announced that the African continent was officially free of wild poliovirus and that 2 of its 3 types have been completely eradicated. This means that out of our entire massive world, only 2 countries have an endemic circulation of the disease. Number 4. U.S. presidential election.
There is still no result in the US presidential election, with just a handful of states still counting votes. President Trump has appeared at the White House, repeating his assertion that he has won Tuesday's election and accusing his opponents of trying to steal it through voter fraud. In his first public remarks since the early hours of Wednesday morning, Mr. Trump said the legal action he was taking in the most closely contested states was to protect the integrity of the election. But he gave no evidence to back up his allegations. Counting, meanwhile, has continued through the night in the handful of states which will decide this election. The margins are incredibly tight, but Joe Biden appears to be edging ever closer to the White House and has called for calm and patience while the counting continues. Well, he is currently projected to have 253 electoral college votes, and Donald...
How could we not mention 2020 and not bring up the most talked about event? The U.S. presidential election has been a topic of discussion throughout the entire year, and the entire thing came to an end in November. Nearly the entire world was watching, but here's a breakdown. Democratic former Vice President Joe Biden and U.S. Senator Kamala Harris won by a landslide against incumbent President Donald Trump and his Vice President Mike Pence.
To win the American presidency, you need a majority in the Electoral College, and to get that, candidates have to win individual states.
We're witnessing history here. This election had the highest voter turnout since 1900, surpassing Barack Obama's record of 69.5 million votes. By losing, Trump became the first U.S. president since 1992 to lose his re-election to a second term, and Biden won the popular vote by a landslide. However, Trump has been calling for overturning the results, claiming that there has been voter fraud, which has delayed the entire process. We will also add that what Trump is doing is constitutional. He has the right to challenge the results if there is suspicion of fraud. With Trump's lawsuits of election fraud or irregularities and witnesses coming out to testify, we will see how the whole thing plays out. At the time of this video, Donald J. Trump is still the United States of America president. If he wins his lawsuits, he will continue through 2024. However, if he loses, Biden and Harris are set to be inaugurated on January 20th, 2021. Number 3. Unrest and protests. On January the 3rd, 2020, the internet was overwhelmed by memes and rumors of a World War III. So starting off our plethora of political unrest and protests, we have the US drone strike that killed Iranian general Qasem Soleimani. Then in May, we had the beyond tragic and cruel killing of George Floyd by police officer Derek Chauvin, which launched the Black Lives Matter movement in the US and protests all over the country. Following that, around October, the Nigerian social movement End SARS, which was a series of mass protests against police brutality that called for the disbanding of a notoriously harmful unit in the Nigerian police called SARS. Of course, there has been a lot more political events, but it will literally take an entire year to go over them. Number 2. Famous deaths. We lost a lot of amazing lives this year. 2020 is the year the world lost Supreme Court Justice and a political rock star who defended women and minorities' rights. Ruth Bader Ginsburg succumbed to cancer. One of the best basketball players in NBA history, Kobe Bryant, was killed on January 26th in a helicopter crash along with his 13-year-old daughter and other passengers. Beloved Jeopardy host Alex Trebek died on November 8th. The last survivor, Reverend Martin Luther King Jr.'s Big Six Civil Rights Activities Group, John Lewis, was also taken from us. If you've seen the Rest in Power hashtag, then you surely heard about the unexpected death of Chadwick Boseman, who beautifully played iconic characters like Jackie Robinson, James Brown, and Marvel's Black Panther. The best James Bond, Sean Connery, passed away, and TV host Regis Philbin died at the age of 88. Number 1. The COVID-19 pandemic. At number 1, as the most, eventful and significant event of 2020, is the still ongoing COVID-19 pandemic, which started back in December 2019 in Wuhan, China. In January, the WHO organization announced the outbreak to be a public health emergency of international concern. And in March, it was officially declared a pandemic. Since then, as of December 2nd, there have been over 64 million cases and over 1.48 million deaths related to the coronavirus. This has led to the largest global recession since the Great Depression, widespread supply shortages, food shortages, agricultural disruption, and more. And that's all we have for you today on the top 10 significant events of 2020. What are your predictions for the next year? Will it be better? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below. If you enjoyed this video, give us a thumbs up. And if you want to see more videos like this, subscribe to our channel and hit that notification bell. We will end this video by honoring some of the precious lives we lost this year. Thanks for watching, and see you next time. Peace.